So here we go. This is part one right now. Charalee Graydon talking about The Judgment Game. Okay, so I'm here speaking with Charalee Graydon. She is the author of a brand new book called The Judgment Game, a book on social commentary about situations that people can get themselves in the criminal justice system, and it asks for the reader to thoughtfully apply themselves to a number of scenarios. Charalee, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Matthew.
The Judgment Game, this book comes after a lengthy career of you working in the legal field. How has the work of your career inspired you to write this book?
Yes, thank you. My work as a lawyer and also my work as a legal academic. I was a lawyer in Alberta, and I was also an academic at several universities in New Zealand, in Alberta, and in Wales. And in all of those instances, this has inspired the book that I have written, The Judgment Game. The book is a book of fiction. It asks the reader to play an active role in making decisions. In essence, the reader is the decision maker. So I'm asking the reader to read a series of vignettes in the chapters of the book and then to make decisions and use the information in the book. The reader doesn't need to have more information than is in the book, and then he or she makes the decisions based on the information.
It's very fair to the reader because, yeah, as you're saying, you don't need any prior, really, experience of the law even. You just have to be a thoughtful person to bring what you have, to bring your own judgment to the judgment game.
That's right. And so in that sense, I've stated that the reader, it's really a diary that the reader it's the reader's own personal diary. As the reader reads through the stories, the reader then makes a decision what they think about the specific situation. So it's a quest, I've indicated, it's a quest for the self within the mystery of consciousness. And what I mean by that is it's the self, meaning the self of those people that you're reading about, the men and the women that you're reading about, and also as you make the decisions as the reader, it's also saying something about yourself. So it's a quest for the self. And when I say the mystery of consciousness, what I mean by that, and the philosophical basis for that is that we don't know what is in the mind of other people. And so we are making judgments, we're making decisions based on where we come from with our background. So many people, as they read this book, they make completely different decisions. One person and the next person reads the same situation and says, I don't agree with what the first person said. This is the way that I feel it should be dealt with.
That's right. And the scenarios you've pictured in the book, they're not altogether pleasant. I mean, these are you're putting on characters that are based on what people might do out in the world, people who are desperate, doing certain acts. And we have to accept what we're reading, and yeah, as you say, make a decision. You can't just let it hang. You just have to make a judgment.
Right. Or it's a judgment, or it's really a matter of making comments and making suggestions, because what the reader is being asked to do is reshape the criminal justice system in this fictitious country. I mean, we're not dealing with reality. This is fiction. And there's a fictitious country. The name of the country is Tortia. And in Tortia, it's a pretty evil country. There's a lot of avarice, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of gambling, there's addictions, terrible addictions. It's a lot of, the problems are grave. The problems are not fun. But for us, as the reader, it's a matter of saying, we can do something about these problems. Here's what I think we can do.
So let's get into part two of this interview. This is with author Charalee Graydon talking about her book, The Judgment Game. Given that you have the context of lengthy legal practice behind your mind when you were writing this, has the process of writing this given you a chance to reflect on the pros and cons of our current legal system? Because as you're saying, you're asking us to make a judgment on limited information, really, which I guess is often what happens for a judicial decision maker.
Right. When you say our own system, as I said, it's not a system I can compare with. It's not the system in a particular country that I can compare with, because the book of fiction is completely fiction. I created the law myself, and so in that sense it seems similar to perhaps laws that you might read in the Commonwealth, but they are not from a particular country. As I've indicated, I've created them myself. And the laws that you use in the judgment game, you don't have to go beyond what is in the book. Now, you've asked about how it relates to present types of legal processes.
As you say, you can't know what's going on in the minds necessarily of everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very good. You make a very good comment, because that is also what the book is about. Is that we don't have all of the information, and so often it says, "Do you have other comments?" In the book, it says, "Do you have other comments?" The other comments perhaps are, "You didn't give me enough information. I need to know this, 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 and this in order to make a decision." So that is what I'm asking the reader to also tell us. Like, what is it that the decision maker needs to know? I mean, in legal situations, often the judge doesn't have all the information. So there is a chapter in the book that's called the Omnipotent Decision Maker, and what that chapter does is it provides more information than an ordinary judge in many legal situations would have. For example, there's a concept that's called solicitor-client privilege in many jurisdictions, and that means that what the client tells his or her lawyer can't be told to the judge. That's solicitor-client privilege. Now, in the Omnipotent Decision Maker chapter, we have situations where you hear what the client told his or her lawyer, and so that may have an influence on what you decide is the right thing to do with that particular scenario.
And wouldn't that be really helpful in real life for the particularly heinous crimes, the murders and things like that, where the defendant's lawyers are claiming insanity or something, or some kind of mental illness, when we really don't know unless we're privy to maybe some of these conversations? And as a society member, we want to know. We want to know if these are genuinely bad people who should be put away, or if they're people who had a brain malfunction at some point.
Right, I understand exactly what you're saying, and so yes, it's very helpful. So as you read the stories, and the ones that are the Omnipotent Decision Maker, where you do have more information than an ordinary judge would normally have, that may or may not be helpful. So, I mean, there are very good reasons that the law has restrictions, because we want people to have the right to have a defense. We want them to have the right to have have a lawyer that will defend them in the criminal justice system. But again, it's the decision maker, it's the reader's choice when they read this. Was that a good thing that I knew this, or is it better I didn't know that? So again, I'm not making a judgment. That's the judgment that the reader makes. Did Miss Graydon give me enough information? Do we have too little information? So that's what I'm asking the reader to please tell in their comments. Now, as I've said, in this book, it's almost like your personal diary. So if you purchase the book and you think, well, I'll read it and I'll give it to my friend. I'll fill in the answers and then I'll give it to my friend. Probably not a good idea, because you're giving your friend your personal diary. What your thoughts are. And your friend may have, and maybe it's a good idea. Some people have said, we want to have a forum so that we can communicate with one another on what our decisions are in each of the scenarios. And yes, that may be very useful. However, it's still your book, your decisions, your particular with your particular background that you make those decisions. So I would say that a forum is an excellent opportunity to share surveys and forums.
It's good because people can make a choice. It's sort of like a practice space. You don't have to feel like whatever you write is in concrete and you'll be judged in eternity for it. You are acting on limited information. You just have to make that decision. Which is actually a good thing for us to learn, I guess.
And it also shows how difficult it is for the people in the judicial system, the judges. And this is not an easy job that a judge would have. Making decisions, as you said, and as I've indicated in the book, you act on limited information. You only act on what was presented to you. You only act on what's presented to you in these stories. And a judge only acts on what is presented to him or her in the court.
The types of vignettes that you have in your story, you have a number of scenarios with different characters. Can you explain what they're like generally?
The first chapter, for example, deals with situations of, it's called Dancing with a Leopard, and it's situations of domestic abuse. And when I say dancing with a leopard, it's because people change their spots like a leopard. So you marry someone and you think everything's lovely, everything's perfect. Well, unfortunately, things don't work out that well. And so it ends up perhaps a situation where either the wife or the husband or the partners, male, female, it becomes abusive, perhaps verbal abuse, physical abuse. So those are the type of scenarios. Other scenarios deal with impaired driving, but in my book, impaired driving, to get your license back, you have to take a course, but you have to do more than that. You also have to allow Torsia. The country has created a machine that reads people's minds. So in order to get your license back, you have to let the country, you have to let the government read your mind. So it's a matter of, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
And Charalee, just before we go, I'm wondering if you could comment on the types of people who might be interested in reading your book, The Judgment Game.
Okay, people who are considering careers in law, people in the criminal justice system or who are involved in the social services system that relates to the criminal justice system, people in probation, but also just people.